What Iran just did in Islamabad is unlike anything we have seen since this war began. It was not a strike, it was not a threat, it was not a missile launch or a naval confrontation. It was something quieter than all of those, and it may have done more damage to the American position than any of them. Washington had a plan. It sent its people. It announced the trip publicly. And then, inside the same city, at the same time, Iran made a single move that changed the entire dynamic of the negotiation. Not by walking away from diplomacy, but by rewriting the terms of who controls it. Iran has moved first. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi landed in Islamabad before the American delegation even left Washington, turning the Pakistani capital into the stage for a diplomatic sequence Tehran is clearly trying to control. According to Reuters and regional reporting, Araghchi conveyed Iran's demands and its reservations about U.S. positions while reaffirming that Tehran would not accept maximalist American terms. The framing from the Iranian side is not a rejection of diplomacy, it is a conditioning of diplomacy. Iran is saying it will negotiate, but only inside a structure it considers fair and only through a mediator it trusts. Iranian officials signaled they were ready to negotiate, but only on terms Tehran considers balanced and without accepting what they see as imposed American red lines. That may be the clearest Iranian framing yet of where diplomacy stands. Not closed, not open, tightly conditioned. Tehran is telling the world it is present in Islamabad, it is engaged with Pakistan, and it has delivered a formal position. But it is also telling the world that presence does not equal submission, and that Iran's demands are the floor, not an opening bid. Araghchi laid out Tehran's demands and its reservations about U.S. conditions to Pakistani officials, mediating the process. Islamabad is now the channel through which Iran is shaping the next phase of diplomacy. Reuters and AP have shown that the main disputes still revolve around Iran's nuclear program, the naval blockade, and the sequencing of concessions, but the full Iranian package has not been publicly detailed. Araghchi moved quickly once on the ground. He held talks with Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir and Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, with senior security officials from both sides present. The presence of military leadership alongside diplomatic counterparts suggests the discussions extend beyond routine diplomacy into broader strategic coordination. Pakistan is not simply carrying messages. It is hosting a process that now involves both the civilian government and the armed forces at the highest level, which is the institutional architecture needed to broker a deal that touches military operations at sea. Despite the diplomatic activity, no direct Araghchi-US meeting has been scheduled. That matters. Even as diplomacy appears active, Tehran is keeping the engagement indirect. Iran said there would be no direct contact with the American delegation during this visit, keeping the process indirect through Pakistan. Pakistani media reports suggest Islamabad is expected to brief Washington on the outcome of its consultations with Iran. The arrangement keeps Pakistan firmly in the role of intermediary rather than facilitator of direct negotiations. That structure can work, but it also creates a gap in messaging where each side hears the other's position filtered through a third party. On the American side, the White House said Witkoff and Kushner would travel to Islamabad, but Trump later said he had told them not to go. Caroline Leavitt said the administration believed the Iranians wanted to talk and that Washington was willing to give diplomacy another chance. She said Vice President JD Vance was on standby and would be willing to travel to Pakistan if it was considered a necessary use of his time. That framing positions Washington as responsive rather than initiating, which is the opposite of how Tehran is framing the same sequence. Both sides want to be seen as the party the other one called. Al Arabiya reported that Iranian officials would prefer negotiations with JD Vance, a claim that has not been confirmed by Reuters or AP. If accurate, it would suggest Tehran sees the vice president, who led the first Islamabad round, as a more workable channel. The message would be that Tehran will calibrate the level of its response to the level of the delegation it faces. Pakistan's role is expanding beyond shuttle diplomacy. Regional reporting has floated broader monitoring ideas, but Reuters and AP have not confirmed a formal Pakistani proposal. If any multinational nuclear oversight mechanism were pursued, it would mark a significant widening of mediation beyond bilateral US-Iran bargaining and give Tehran a path to address Washington's nuclear demands, without accepting a framework that looks like American dictation. While the diplomatic track moved through Islamabad, Iranian official messaging cast the talks as evidence that Washington needs an exit. Iranian state outlets carried language describing the United States as seeking a face-saving way out of a war quagmire, though Reuters and AP have not independently matched that specific defense ministry framing. That language positions the talks not as mutual de-escalation, but as an American retreat dressed in diplomatic clothing. It is the mirror image of the White House framing, which presents the talks as Iranian desperation. Both sides are now publicly arguing that the other one needs the deal more. The defense ministry remarks reflect a broader line emerging from Tehran in recent days. Iranian officials have continued to present their position as one of resilience rather than exhaustion, though Reuters and AP have not fully resolved how that messaging maps onto battlefield reality. The framing is that Iran entered the ceasefire from a position of strength, and that the decision to pause was strategic rather than forced. The context for this second phase is the failure of the first. AP reported that the first round, led by JD Vance, ended after 21 hours without an agreement. Core disagreements remained unresolved, particularly over the naval blockade and the sequencing of concessions. Vance said the talks ended without a deal after Iran refused US terms on its nuclear program. Tehran said Washington had moved the goalposts. Pakistan said the process was just beginning. Now, the second round is based on a loosely tied arrangement where one side has refused to meet the other directly. That is not a collapse, but it is not a negotiation either. It is a mediation under strain. All of this is unfolding under a fragile ceasefire that Pakistan has been trying to preserve and extend through renewed mediation. The truce has been extended without a fixed deadline, buying time for diplomacy, but also prolonging uncertainty. The White House has denied setting a 3 to 5 day deadline for an Iranian response, saying the timeline would be dictated by the president alone. Iran has said it did not request the extension. The result is strategic ambiguity. It leaves Tehran, the shipping industry, and the Pakistani mediators guessing about how long the diplomatic window stays open and what happens when it closes. The naval blockade remains the single biggest obstacle to resume talks. Iran has repeatedly cited the blockade as a ceasefire violation and as the reason it has withheld a decision on direct engagement. The blockade on Iranian ships and ports remains in force, and Trump has signaled it will stay until a final deal is secured. That creates a structural problem. Iran says it will not negotiate under the pressure of a blockade. Washington says the blockade stays until a deal is reached. Neither position leaves room for the other without one side moving first, or Pakistan finding a formula that lets both sides claim they did not blink. For now, the positions remain unchanged. Washington is pushing for talks. Tehran is calibrating its response. Islamabad is carrying messages between the two. Iran's demands are now in Pakistani hands, while wider diplomatic formulas remain the subject of reporting and speculation rather than confirmed public terms. Araghchi has met the Pakistani military and civilian leadership. Witkoff and Kushner are arriving. Vance is on standby. The ceasefire has no deadline. The blockade has no end date. And the question that sits underneath all of it is whether indirect diplomacy through a mediator can resolve a crisis that direct talks could not. So this is the picture. Iran arrived in Islamabad first. It delivered a formal position. It refused direct contact with the American delegation. It said it would not surrender and would not accept American red lines. Its defense ministry said Washington was looking for a face-saving exit. The White House said Iran wanted to talk in person. Both sides are now publicly arguing that the other one needs the deal more. The talks in Islamabad may be about more than ending the war. They may also be about defining who blinked first. Subscribe to WLA for daily geopolitical analysis.